I was 18 when I learned what betrayal tastes like. Not the petty kind you shake off, like a friend flaking on plans or someone gossiping behind your back. No, this was the kind of betrayal that changes you. The kind that flips your world upside down and makes you question whether the people who raised you ever really saw you at all. My name's Paul, and I've always been the quiet one. Not shy, just observant. I grew up in a house where keeping your head down was a survival skill, not a personality trait. When you live with a stepmother who sees you as a reminder of her husband's past, and a father too spineless to challenge her, silence becomes your best weapon. My mom passed when I was 5. Cancer. I don't remember much about her, just this soft humming when she brushed my hair, the scent of lavender when she tucked me in. After she died, it didn't take long for my dad to remarry. Her name was Deborah. I called her that, too, never Mom. She didn't like it, but I never cared. From the moment she moved in, it was clear I came as an inconvenient add-on to her new life plan. Like getting a fancy house, but finding out it came with a leaky basement. She had a son, too, Brandon, 2 years older than me. If I was the leaky basement, Brandon was the showroom. Brandon was tall, loud, charming when he wanted to be, and catastrophically bad at anything that required discipline. He wrecked my dad's car at 17 and blamed the brakes. Failed out of college in his second year and blamed the professors. Got caught stealing pills from his friend's mom's cabinet, blamed the friend for tempting him. And every time, my dad and Deborah acted like it was the world that failed Brandon, not Brandon failing himself. I never made waves. I focused on school, worked part-time at a hardware store, built websites on the side for local businesses, and taught myself how to code watching YouTube tutorials at 2 a.m. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just liked solving problems. I liked building things from nothing. But I guess when you're not breaking things, no one stops to notice how much you're building. By the time I got accepted into my top choice university, a respected tech school 3 hours from home, I was running a few steady freelance gigs and had saved enough for a used laptop, some basic dorm supplies, and a battered but working car I bought from an old guy who lived down the block. My college fund, the one my mom had started when I was a baby and my dad claimed he kept going after she passed, was supposed to cover the tuition and housing. Supposed to. A week before move-in day, Dad called me downstairs. That alone felt weird. We weren't a sit-down talk kind of family. Usually, if he needed something, he'd yell from the kitchen or send Deborah to do the talking. But that day, he was sitting at the table. Deborah was beside him, her hands folded like she was praying. I still remember the tight, pit-pat thud in my chest as I walked in, like my body knew before my brain caught up. "Sit down, Paul," Dad said, gesturing to the chair across from them. His voice was calm. Too calm. Deborah gave me this look, not cold exactly, but blank, like she was detaching herself from the fallout she knew was coming. I didn't sit. I just crossed my arms and waited. Dad cleared his throat. "We've been talking, and, well, there's been a change in plans." I didn't say anything, just stared. "Your brother's had a rough couple of years," he continued. "He's clean now, doing therapy, and he's finally ready to get his life back on track. There's a program out west. It's expensive, but it's exactly what he needs. Structure, support, real opportunity." Deborah jumped in. "It's not just some rehab clinic. It's a holistic recovery program with career training, therapy, mentorship. They help people start over, Paul." I already knew. Somewhere in my gut, I knew exactly where this was going. "So," Dad said, "we're using the college fund to give him a second chance." My stomach dropped. Not like a dramatic fall, more like a slow, grinding twist. Like gears locking in the wrong direction. I said nothing. Dad kept talking, like he had to fill the silence. "You're resourceful. You're smart. You've always figured things out. It doesn't have to be the end for you. Maybe you can defer for a year. Work, save up, or look into scholarships, online programs." Deborah nodded, her tone gentle, rehearsed. "You'll be fine, Paul. You always figure something out." It was the way she said it, like it was a compliment. Like I should be proud that I'd made myself so easy to discard. I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I just walked upstairs, grabbed my laptop, and left. I didn't slam the door. That would have made it real. I drove to the edge of town, parked in an empty lot behind the diner where I used to refill Deborah's coffee when she came in during her lunch breaks, and stared at the cracked screen of my computer. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From clarity. I wasn't just alone. I'd always been alone. I just hadn't admitted it to myself. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't text my friends goodbye. I didn't post some cryptic quote on social media. I opened my laptop and started building. I didn't know what exactly, just that I had skills, and I was done waiting for someone to let me use them. And as I coded in the front seat of my car, watching the sun rise through a bug-smeared windshield, I made a silent promise. I would make something of myself without them. I would succeed in spite of them. And one day, they'd come knocking again. And I'd be ready. I didn't know just how soon that day would come. I didn't go back home after that night. I crashed on a friend's couch for a while. Caleb, a guy I'd helped set up an online store for his dad's carpentry business. He didn't ask questions, just tossed me a spare key, pointed to the futon, and said, "Stay as long as you need." I think he assumed it was just a fight, a temporary thing. So did I at first. But when 2 days passed with no calls, no texts, not even a single "Where are you?" from my father, I realized it wasn't a fight. It was a transaction, a cold, silent decision, like selling off old furniture you didn't want anymore. They'd made their choice. And that choice had a name: Brandon. The same Brandon who once got suspended for lighting fireworks in the school gym, who stole money out of my dad's wallet and blamed me, who never once, in all our years under the same roof, apologized or said thank you. Not even when I covered for him or fixed things he broke. I used to think he just hated me. Now I think he didn't even see me. Not as a person. I was just background noise to him. The responsible half-brother who cleaned up messes and didn't ask for much. And for that, I was punished. I deferred college before the deadline passed. There was no other option. I couldn't afford tuition without the fund, and scholarships that laid in the game were a long shot. I applied anyway, dozens of them, even the obscure ones. I pulled 10-hour shifts at the hardware store and coded at night in Caleb's kitchen, building small apps for local businesses, designing logos for online clients, even editing videos for Twitch streamers just to stack up a little cash. Every cent I made, I saved. The one thing I refused to do was tell anyone what really happened. When people asked about school, I just said, took a gap year. Wanted to work on some stuff. I couldn't stomach the pity, the subtle winces. The way people lower their voices when they talk about your parents like they died, when really, they just gave up on you. That silence was my armor. But eventually, even armor cracks. It was around mid-October, 2 months after what I started calling the meeting, that the text started. Not from my dad, from Brandon. "Yo man, you good?" I stared at it for a while before locking my phone. No response. A few days later. "Heard you moved out LOL. You crashing with that Caleb dude?" Again, silence. Then, "Look, I didn't ask them to do that. I didn't know, alright." I wanted to scream. But what was the point? If he didn't know, then he knew now, and still nothing changed. No apology. No offer to give it back. Just vague, half-hearted excuses. Then came the real slap in the face. A photo posted to Deborah's Facebook. Her, Dad, and Brandon standing outside a gleaming building in Arizona. So proud of Brandon for starting fresh. This program is the beginning of something incredible. Everyone deserves a second chance, Red Heart. My name wasn't even mentioned. That's when I cracked. I didn't comment. I didn't send a message. I just sat on Caleb's porch that night with a blanket around my shoulders, the laptop warm on my legs, and rage burning under my skin like a low-grade fever. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The smug tilt of Brandon's grin in that photo, the way Dad's arm was around his shoulder like he was the golden son, the one they'd bet everything on. Meanwhile, I was the one rebuilding his life from scratch in a stranger's living room. And still, I pushed forward. By late November, I'd built a small tool that helped freelance designers manage multiple client projects in one dashboard: timelines, invoice tracking, communication threads. Nothing groundbreaking, but clean, efficient, and made for people like me, tired, overworked, and trying to stay sane. I posted it to a few tech forums, sent it to some YouTubers who reviewed productivity tools, and then forgot about it. Until one of them replied. Turns out, a mid-sized design studio picked it up and started using it with their whole team. They emailed asking for more features, and when I added them, they PayPal'd me a bonus. Enough to finally move out of Caleb's place and rent a tiny studio downtown. That was the first time in months I let myself feel something close to hope. But with hope came vulnerability. And with vulnerability came the next blow. It was the week of Christmas when I finally got a call from my dad. I let it ring once, twice, then hovered over decline. I should have ended it there. But some stupid part of me still craved a reason, an explanation, maybe even a regret. So I answered. Paul, he said, sounding tired. Glad you picked up. Silence. How are you doing, son? I almost laughed. Son? That word hadn't left his mouth in months. Maybe years. I'm fine, I said flatly. What do you want? A long pause. Then, look. I know you're upset. Upset? I said, my voice breaking slightly. You gave away my future like it was a family vacation fund. Upset doesn't cover it. He sighed. It wasn't easy, all right? But your brother made his choices. I cut in. So did you. Another pause. Brandon's not doing well, he admitted. He left the program. Said it wasn't the right fit. He's back home now. We're struggling. I stared at the floor. Deborah's working double shifts, he added. And I've picked up part-time work, but we're barely covering bills. Your brother's looking for jobs, but nothing, I snapped. You made your choice. Now live with it. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Then, as if this was the real reason he called, he said, I heard you started something. A business or an app or something. My heart went cold. How? Brandon saw it online. One of his friends uses it for freelance work. Said it was great. He showed us the site. Of course he did. We're proud of you, Paul, Dad said gently. Truly. That word again. Proud. From the same man who couldn't spare a cent or a goodbye before handing over my future to his wife's son. We were wondering, he continued, if maybe you could. I don't know. Help Brandon out. Hire him. Give him a role. He's good with people, and I hung up. I didn't say a word. I didn't even let him finish the sentence. I just pressed end call and stared at the blank screen of my phone. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. They weren't sorry. They were desperate. And desperation doesn't equal remorse. It equals need. They needed me. But the worst part? That wasn't the end of it. 3 days later, I opened my email to find a message from Deborah. Subject, let's talk like a family. The body was short. Paul, I know things have been tense. I know you feel hurt. But this bitterness is not healthy. Brandon is your brother. We are your family. And families lift each other up, not tear each other down. He made mistakes, yes. But don't we all? You have a gift. Use it to help, not to punish. Deborah. I stared at that message for a long time. My hands trembled as I read it over and over, the words burning into me like acid. Punish? She thought I was punishing them? No, I was surviving them. I'd spent my entire life being their emotional punching bag, the backup plan, the afterthought. And now that I'd clawed my way out of the hole they threw me into, they wanted to pull me back down, all under the banner of family. No, not this time. This wasn't just a betrayal anymore. This was war, and I was just getting started. I didn't reply to Deborah's email. Not that day, not the next, not ever. I marked it as unread, just so I could come back and reread it whenever I needed a reminder of what I was dealing with. Not a mother figure trying to mend things, but a manipulator disguising guilt-tripping as wisdom. Use it to help, not to punish. As if building something on my own terms, without dragging the past behind me, was somehow an act of vengeance. Maybe that's when it truly sank in, that they never saw me as a person. Just a resource. A backup plan. Someone who was expected to succeed just enough to clean up Brandon's messes, but not so much that it disrupted the family hierarchy. That realization was liberating, but also crushing, because no matter how strong I wanted to be, I still felt it. That dull, persistent ache in my chest. Like being abandoned by your own blood rewires something fundamental inside you. And as much as I told myself I didn't need them, I couldn't ignore the quiet grief that came with losing not just a father, but the idea of one. The next few months were a blur. My little tool, the freelancer dashboard, started gaining traction. A couple of design firms recommended it in their newsletters. I added tiered pricing, offered custom branding packages, and even landed a modest write-up in a mid-tier productivity blog. The revenue wasn't life-changing, but for a 19-year-old living in a one-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture and a coffee table made from stacked crates, it felt like winning the lottery. But even success has a shadow. I was alone, not in the physical sense. I had acquaintances, clients, even Caleb, who still swung by with greasy takeout and long rants about his job at the warehouse. But emotionally, I was drifting, detached, like I was watching my life unfold from a few steps back. I could feel myself hardening, growing more calculated. I wasn't angry all the time, just numb. That numbness scared me more than anything. Then one night in February, something strange happened. I got a message on LinkedIn of all places, from a recruiter named Madeline. She worked for a boutique VC firm that focused on early-stage tech products. Said she saw a mention of my app on some design forum and wanted to chat. At first I assumed it was spam, or worse, some corporate shark looking to steal my code. But I responded, cautiously. We scheduled a call. She asked me about my vision, my background, my future goals. I told her I didn't have a grand vision. I just wanted to make things easier for people who felt overwhelmed by the chaos of freelancing. I like that, she said. There's honesty in it. Most of the founders I talk to pitch revolutionary platforms or industry disruptions. You just want to solve a problem. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a video call with 2 of her partners. A month after that, I signed a small pre-seed deal, enough to cover some real development help and finally pay myself more than survival wages. I called Caleb that night, sitting on the floor in the corner of my apartment, the contract still open on my laptop. You did it, he said, his voice thick with pride. Dude, you freaking did it. But I didn't feel like celebrating. Not really. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew what was coming. And I was right. The next morning, as if summoned by my quiet success, Deborah emailed me again. This time, she was more direct. Paul, your father is very hurt that you won't return his calls. Brandon is in a dark place again. He tried to get a job last week, but the stress got to him. We're worried. You know he's sensitive. He looks up to you. He's been talking about the app. He says he could help. Marketing, outreach, whatever you need. Maybe you could bring him in. It would give him purpose. Don't shut him out. You're his brother. Deborah, that email made my stomach turn. Not just for what it asked, but for what it implied. That I was somehow responsible for Brandon's failures. That my success came with strings I didn't agree to. But more than that, it made something else snap into place. They weren't just trying to bring me back into the fold. They were trying to attach themselves to my success. Like barnacles clinging to a boat they once tried to sink. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a walk around my neighborhood. Just a quiet, cold evening walk with my hands in my jacket pockets and my thoughts churning like a storm. That was the night I realized I hadn't truly dealt with the betrayal. I just buried it under work. I told myself I didn't need closure, that I was better off without them. But deep down, I still felt like that 18-year-old sitting in the kitchen while his father explained why his future was being handed to someone else. I needed to deal with it. Not for them. For me. So I did something drastic. I reached out to my mother's sister, Aunt Carol. I hadn't seen her in years. She lived 2 states away and wasn't close to my dad, especially after he remarried. But when I explained the situation over the phone, she didn't hesitate. Come visit, she said. You need a reset. So I did. I drove 6 hours through winding roads and foggy valleys until I reached her cozy farmhouse at the edge of a sleepy town. The moment she opened the door, I felt like I could breathe again. Her hug was warm, grounding, the kind that says you're home, even if you don't live there. She didn't press me for details, just listened. And when I finally told her everything, the meeting, the betrayal, the emails, she sat in silence for a long time before saying, "You've been carrying this alone for too long." And she was right. We spent 3 days talking, walking through old photo albums, drinking hot tea on her porch. She told me stories about my mom, real stories, not the vague, sanitized versions Dad used to feed me. Stories about how stubborn she was, how fiercely she loved, how she once spent a week building a birdhouse because she refused to buy one someone else made. You're a lot like her, Aunt Carol said softly. You build things when other people quit. That was the first time in years I cried. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw me. When I returned to the city, something inside me had shifted. I felt lighter, sharper, like I'd finally shed the last traces of guilt that had kept me tethered to a family that never deserved me. I threw myself into the business. I hired a small team, remote developers, a content strategist, and a community manager. We launched a clean rebrand, added new features, and started onboarding entire creative agencies. The app was no longer just a tool. It was becoming a platform. Users were growing fast. Revenue was consistent. I even had interest from a couple of angel investors. But with every new milestone, the messages from home intensified. Brandon started messaging me directly. Heard you raised money. That's huge. Can we talk? Then, don't ignore me, man. I'm serious. I could really help. I've got ideas. You'd be surprised. Then, you think you're better than me now? Just because you made a fancy app? And finally, I need this, Paul. That last one stopped me cold. Because it wasn't a request. It was a demand. And it brought back every memory I tried to bury. Every moment I stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every sacrifice I made that no one noticed. Every time I watched Brandon self-destruct while everyone else scrambled to soften his fall. Not anymore. I wasn't a fallback plan. I wasn't a safety net. And I wasn't giving him another platform to fail on. Not mine. That night, I sat in my apartment. The same apartment I'd once scrolled through job listings in, unsure how I'd afford groceries, and I looked around. The space was still small, but it was mine. The laptop on my desk was new, the software running on it fully licensed, and the code inside it was written by someone who dragged himself out of rock bottom with nothing but his bare hands and a refusal to quit. I didn't know anyone anything, especially not the people who watched me drown, and only reached out once they saw I'd built a boat. What I didn't know, though, was that they weren't done. Not yet, because a storm was coming, and this time, they weren't just asking for help. They were going to demand it, publicly, and they had no idea how ready I was. The email that changed everything came on a Wednesday. It was from a woman named Sarah Jennings, a journalist who wrote for a rising tech-focused newsletter called Nextmaker Weekly. I'd read her stuff before. Clean, sharp, always human. She had this talent for not just covering products but the stories behind them. The late nights, the burnouts, the weird coffee-fueled breakthroughs. So when I saw her name in my inbox, I did a double take. Hey Paul, a mutual contact, Madeline from Tetra, mentioned your platform. I've been following your journey since the Freelancer dashboard soft launched. Impressive stuff. I'm putting together a piece on quiet builders, young founders who aren't VC loud, but still building real value. I'd love to feature you, if you're up for it. Let me know if you'd be open to a quick call. No pressure. Best. Sarah. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I smiled. This was the moment. Not just for recognition, but for leverage. The truth is, I hadn't thought about revenge in the classic sense. I wasn't plotting to ruin anyone or send angry letters or hack Brandon's accounts. That wasn't me. I'd been too busy building. But now that I had traction, visibility, and momentum, now that people were finally listening, I realized something. They only respected what they couldn't ignore. So I started laying the groundwork. I replied to Sarah that afternoon, keeping it casual and professional. We scheduled a video call for Friday. I cleaned up my workspace, not too polished, just tidy enough to show I wasn't some kid coding in a basement. When we spoke, she asked about the app, the traction, the features, the roadmap. But then she said something unexpected. So here's the thing, Paul, the tool is great. But honestly, I'm more interested in you. The story behind it. You're young, scrappy, off the beaten path, and I can tell there's something deeper here. Mind if I ask, what made you build it? I hesitated. Then I told her. Not everything. Just enough. I told her I lost my college fund unexpectedly, that someone I trusted made a choice that forced me to start from zero, that I had nowhere to go and nothing to fall back on. So I built something instead. I never named names. Never made it a sob story. Just facts. Clean, concise, human. She was silent for a moment after I finished. Damn, she said. That's the angle. The article dropped a week later. Titled, From Betrayal to Bootstrap. How one 19-year-old built his own future from a car seat. It blew up. Not viral, but steady, reshared in productivity circles, discussed in indie dev newsletters, even picked up by a few angel blogs. My inbox tripled overnight. And right on cue, so did the calls from home. It was like lighting a beacon and watching the moths return. First came a message from my dad. I read the article. I'm proud of you. Maybe it's time we talked. There's a lot that was left unsaid. Then one from Deborah. The article was beautifully written. You've always been special, Paul. Brandon was moved to tears. He's been trying, you know. He just doesn't have what you have. Maybe you could give him a project? Even something small. And finally, Brandon himself. Yo, look, I know we've had our issues. But seriously, that article? Mad respect. I've got some ideas I've been sketching out, marketing stuff, content strategy, even maybe a podcast. Could we meet up? Talk shop? That last one made me laugh. A podcast. Of course. He always thought success was about the spotlight, not the grind. That if he just talked like a CEO, people would believe it. But I wasn't surprised. In fact, I'd been waiting for this moment. The attention gave me options. But the article also gave me something else, credibility. In the tech world, perception is everything. You can build the best product in the world, but if no one knows your name, it doesn't matter. Now people did know. And more importantly, so did my family. And that's when I started crafting the setup. No yelling, no revenge rants. Just chess. Quiet, deliberate moves. First, I reached out to a friend from a coding Slack group, Alan. He was a back-end dev with a sharp brain and zero filter. I knew I needed someone I could trust, someone who didn't care about family politics, who just liked building cool things. I offered him a part-time contract. He took it. Next, I expanded the team again. Not a huge hire, just a few contributors. A UX designer from Berlin, a brand consultant from Toronto, a customer success lead from Atlanta who used to work at a startup that flamed out but had learned exactly why. All of them vetted. All of them reliable. All of them fully remote. Then I updated the website. I added a new section. We're growing. Subtle. Clean. No bragging. Just a quiet invitation to believe in something bigger. Finally, I did something I hadn't done in years. I emailed my dad. Not Deborah. Not Brandon. Him. Hey, saw your message. Thanks for reading the article. I'm glad it resonated. I've been building something real. It's grown a lot. We're not hiring right now, not officially, but I'll keep you in the loop if that changes. Hope things are all right. Paul. Polite. Cold. Unmistakably distant. He replied a day later. Things are okay. Brandon's still trying to find his footing. He was hoping he could reach out to you directly. He has ideas. I know things got messy, but you're still my son. And I'm proud of you. That hasn't changed. We'd love to see you. Maybe dinner sometime. I didn't respond. Because I knew what was coming next. The pivot from pride to guilt to expectation. And I needed to be ready. So I started gathering receipts. Not in the petty sense. I didn't want dirt or gossip. I wanted proof of my journey, my work, my self-worth. I organized every screenshot of the early days. The PayPal invoices from logo clients. The messy Trello boards from my first feature updates. The late-night emails I sent from Caleb's living room at 2 a.m. I even found an old photo I forgot I had. My car parked in that diner lot. Laptop glowing in the passenger seat. Windshield fogged from my breath. That was the night it all began. I printed it out and pinned it above my desk. Because this wasn't about them anymore. This was about me. About proving, first to myself, and then to the world, that I was never the backup plan. I was the main character in a story they never thought I'd write. And soon, they were going to realize that too. Because I had a plan. And it started with a simple truth. They only come back when they think you're useful again. So I was going to be useful. Just not to them. Not yet. Because the final move hadn't been played. And I was done waiting for them to make the first one. They always say revenge is a dish best served cold. I used to think that meant angry cold, the kind where your hands are shaking but your face stays calm. But no, real revenge, the kind that lands, it's quiet, patient. You don't throw it in their face. You make sure they have to live in it. That's how I knew I was ready. It all started with an invite. A fake one. I created a private landing page on my company's website, password protected and unlisted, just for Brandon. The headline read, "Join our team, partnership opportunity." Underneath, a neatly designed proposal tailored specifically to his ego. We're seeking a face for our brand. Someone charismatic, with marketing instincts. Ideal for self-starters ready to grow with a rising tech company. It was everything Brandon thought he was. Underneath that, a form, name, email, phone number, and a section labeled Pitch Yourself. I sent him the link through a burner email. No branding, no identifying info. Just, "Hi Brandon. Your name came up as a candidate for an upcoming brand initiative tied to a fast-scaling productivity tool. We're looking for young voices who've overcome setbacks and want to connect with other creatives. Heard your name through a podcast loop. Thought you might be a fit. Apply here if interested. Redacted. Brandscape Partners." That night, he applied. He filled out the form with enthusiasm. I know because I'd set the back end to forward all responses directly to my inbox. His pitch was painfully predictable. I've faced real struggles, addiction, burnout, loss of direction. But I've come back stronger. I believe I can be a voice of hope for others. People relate to authenticity. I've got marketing ideas, video content concepts, social strategies. I just need a shot. It was almost poetic. I waited a day, then sent the second email. This one was even colder, even more fake. Hi, Brandon. Thanks for your application. You're being considered for a partnership interview. In the meantime, please complete the following assessment to help us understand your style and content instincts. Assessment link, Creative Prompt Doc. Deadline, Friday. If selected, you'll be contacted for the next step. TM. The assessment was a detailed branding challenge. I asked him to design a mock social strategy for a new app. It wasn't mine, just a dummy brand I whipped up, complete with logos and fake screenshots. It included tasks like create 5 tweet-sized hooks for launch week, write a short founder's story for Instagram, draft a 30-second video script. He did it all. Spent hours, judging by the timestamps on his edits. I imagine him in his room, sweatpants and coffee breath, pacing around trying to sound profound, trying to prove he wasn't the failure everyone whispered about, trying to impress strangers who didn't exist. And when he submitted it, I said nothing. Just let the silence hum. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. He followed up twice. Just wanted to check in, still super interested. Haven't heard back. Hope I didn't miss the window. Then the third message came. This one was different. Okay, I saw the article. I know it's you. The fake, opportunity, the silence, the setup. You think you're so clever, that you've outgrown us, that you get to play God now because you wrote some code and made a few bucks. But let me tell you something, Paul. Nobody roots for the guy who kicks his own family when they're down. You want to act like we were villains? Fine. Enjoy your little kingdom. Just don't be surprised when people see the full picture. I read that message 3 times. Then I screenshot it. That was my final receipt. Because here's what Brandon didn't know. While he was wasting days pitching himself to a fake company, I was setting up the real move. Remember that article that went semi-viral? The one Sarah wrote? Well, thanks to that, I'd been approached by a podcast series that spotlighted self-made entrepreneurs. Their hook was redemption arcs. Grit stories. Real talk. So I pitched them something. I'd like to talk about family, I said. How the people closest to you can sometimes be the ones who cut deepest, and how you find your way back anyway. They loved it. And so I recorded a raw, unflinching interview. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. I told the story of the night my college fund disappeared. How I was told, to my face, that someone else deserved a second chance more than I deserved a first. How I walked out, built something in silence, and watched the same people who left me behind come crawling back when they realized I'd succeeded without them. The episode was titled, When Family Closes the Door, You Build Your Own House. It dropped on a Monday morning. By noon, it had 50,000 listens. By the next day, it had over 100,000. And the messages started rolling in. From strangers. Cried listening to this. I'm the Paul in my family too. Thank you. Needed this more than you know. They always come back when you make it. From former teachers. Heard the podcast. Knew you'd do big things. Even from Madeline, the VC scout who originally connected me to Sarah. Paul. The internet loves a builder with receipts. And then, from Deborah. I heard the podcast. You didn't have to do that. We've already been through so much. Now people are asking questions. Your father is getting emails. Brandon is humiliated. I hope it was worth it. I didn't reply. Because yes, it was worth it. And then came the real fallout. Brandon's old high school friend, the one who now ran a niche blog that covered minor influencers and podcast drama, posted a thread titled, Is this podcast founder talking about his real family? Because I think I know them. He connected dots that weren't even hidden, pulled quotes from old Facebook posts, scraped archived family photos, even pulled Brandon's own words from comments on Reddit, where he'd ranted about losing an opportunity to nepotism and tech snobs. It snowballed from there. Suddenly Brandon wasn't the misunderstood brother. He was the brother who'd fumbled his second chance and come begging for a third. Deborah shut down her Facebook. My father deleted his LinkedIn. But none of it was my doing. I hadn't revealed them. They revealed themselves through their actions, their entitlement, their inability to see that the world had moved on without them. And I just kept building. By spring, the company had doubled in size. We launched our first mobile app. I brought Caleb on as head of partnerships, hired Alan full-time, got featured in a Forbes 30 under 30 shortlist. But the best part? I set up a scholarship fund. Small for now, just 1 student a year. For kids who lost a parent early. For those raised in households where dreams were luxuries. For people who, like me, were told their best wasn't enough, and had to build futures out of broken promises. I called it the first chance fund. Not a second chance. A first. Because everyone deserves at least one. And my family. I never heard from them again after that. Not once. Not even when the app passed 100,000 users. Not when I was invited to speak at a tech summit. Not even when local news ran a short segment titled, "From Couch Surfing to CEO, a Homegrown Success Story." They disappeared, the same way they had when it counted. And I was finally okay with that. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes, the best revenge is living a life so full, so deliberate, and so unapologetically yours that the people who tried to bury you can't even recognize the version of you that bloomed. And me? I bloomed. Right out of the dirt they left me in.